I thought, oh my God, he's having a stroke.
Look, if
Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question.
She was contradicting herself in these clips.
When Jill Biden sat down with CBS News this week, she may have thought she was helping explain one of the most consequential political moments in American modern history. Instead, she may have reopened one of the Democratic Party's deepest wounds heading into the midterm elections. For years, Americans were told not to believe what they were seeing with their own eyes, that Joe Biden was aging and he was out of sight, and it was unclear how he was doing. Then came the debate, confirming what we all felt and saw. Then came the collapse of Biden's re-election campaign 100 days later. And now comes a memoir and a media tour that many Democrats fear is just raising more questions than it's answering. This is coming at the very moment that the party is trying to convince voters it learned lessons from 2024. And Jill Biden is essentially forcing Americans to think again about whether they were misled in the first place. Joining me now is a true Washington insider, Jill Biden's former White House press secretary, Michael LaRosa. And believe me, he doesn't hold back. Michael, this is a rough moment for Democrats. The party is fighting over this disputed autopsy report. Approval ratings remain weak. Donors are restless. And now Jill Biden is out promoting a memoir that seems to be reopening old wounds about the 2024 election. What struck you most about her comments?
A lot. But I guess I would start with, I'm a little surprised at how vulnerable and exposed they allowed her to be by kind of painting a different picture for the public of what she felt in the moment, because she was contradicting herself in these clips from CBS. So I'm anxious to see the rest of the interview, but from what we know now, she is contradicting what she said and what the campaign said in the moments after, in the hours after, and in the days after the debate. Now, from what I know of Jill Biden, from knowing her and knowing about their history, I mean, this is a wife who ran a Catholic priest out of his hospital room when they were trying to give Biden the last rites. She got in between him and protesters. Twice she put herself between protesters and her husband on the 20 campaign.
Yeah.
What exactly, why would she be sitting there doing nothing if she really did think he was having a stroke? That doesn't strike me as something Jill Biden would do.
I don't
Live TV or not.
I don't see that as the same. I don't think, saying someone is having a stroke versus not giving them their last rites. I think she didn't want him to get his last rites because she didn't want to believe that he was going to die.
But I think my point is that if she ever felt like he was at risk, that she would react, and she didn't react. And the other thing,
her reaction was really actually quite different, and that's what's so surprising. And she, like you said, she's brought so much criticism on herself.
Oh, the reaction has been brutal, and I feel really bad for her because
why?
Well, it's hard to see somebody that you care about, and I do care about Dr. B. I love Dr. B, and I know she cared about me at one point for a couple of years, but it's hard to see somebody continue to damage themselves and their credibility, to know what could have been, that they continue to make really bad mistakes when it comes to how they communicate to the public, when it comes to how her public relations is executed. I mean, this is the sloppiest way to kick off a book tour, because if I was there, my goal would be to improve her public image her standing with the public, because she suffered such a credibility crisis
Don't you
after
think?
the debate.
Yeah, but
And
don't you think that's what this book is all about? And
well,
isn't
I don't how do you help your credibility, improve your credibility, if you're now changing the way you paint the picture of that night and what took place? But not only that, then she's saying, oh, but they went along with the gaslighting, and they went along with the lying and evasiveness. So
yeah.
what is it? Were they lying then? Is she lying now? But either way, this is a really bad start to a book tour, which I don't know. She should be trying to correct the record, but answer for questions that have been left unanswered, and instead she's creating more questions, and that's a huge problem.
Yeah, I would agree with you, but I think the best PR defense is the truth, right?
Well, of course, but that goes back to something that you and I have talked about many times. These people were allergic to transparency. They were allergic to anything human and normal. They thought that and I agree with you, Tara, had she come out and just said, oh my God, I've never seen him like this. It scared me to death as his wife. I thought he was having a stroke. If she had come out and said that, she may have gotten some of the benefit of the doubt. They may have been able to pull off, this was a unique circumstance kind of situation. Yeah. The problem was, Tara, they spent a year hiding him. They spent a year not engaging with the press, not doing press conferences, not taking questions, attacking the press, hiding from the press, denying that the polls were bad, denying that the economy was bad, denying that he was in bad health. Meanwhile, making all these public accommodations for him, the stairs of the plane, his shoes, the way he walks, all of these public accommodations. The debate didn't create concerns about Biden. The debate confirmed the concerns people had had for a year. And you and I are talking about it all of the time. Hey, I paid a price for talking about it. They came after me and tried to smear me for saying, what are they doing? Like, these polls are bad. Pay attention. He's not engaging. He's not doing press. He's running against the most savvy, most accessible opponent and candidate in the history of presidential candidates when it comes to the media, and he's nowhere. They were trying to run out the clock.
Yeah, you can't do that. You
can't run a campaign like that. So the debate was not a moment of inflection. It was a moment of, this is over.
Yeah. And she didn't see that because she went out there saying he was totally fine. That didn't feel like a one-night event to me, and I think most people could see that.
If she thought he was, if she really felt like in that moment that he was not well, that he shouldn't have gone to do a rally right afterwards. He shouldn't have gone to a Waffle House stop after. They shouldn't have done a big rally the next day.
Yeah.
If your concern was for his health, as I think most people at home were,
after they got over the whole idea of, oh my God, that gut feeling I had was actually confirmed right before my very eyes.
That's exactly right. It affirmed.
American people are smart. They are not dumb.
Yes, I know. But the Biden people always thought that they could play a little too cute by half with
everything. They could outsmart the American people.
Yeah, they thought that.
The Trump team does too.
Yeah,
all
sure.
Politicians think they can.
Sure.
I mean, really.
Sure. But what I think the Biden people really never could meet the moment on, they could just never meet the moment. They could never understand how and what the public expects of their public leaders. And the public can see through overmanagement. They knew that he was hiding for a year. They knew that he was being overmanaged for a year. They knew that something was wrong because he couldn't show and tell.
Yeah, he couldn't really walk that well.
And that debate just confirmed everybody, and when I say everybody, I mean at least all of the Democrats' worst fears, worst suspicions. And that's how he lost support. They continued to lose support because of how they handled this after the debate too. And it was just it was, you know, it was a nightmare that they just did everything wrong. And that's what also confuses me. The same people who got everything wrong in the moment when it mattered are advising them now
on how to clean it all up again.
And look at how well it's going.
Yeah.
This little teaser clip in less than 24 hours has been met with hostility, resentment, and more skepticism, and harmed her credibility. Her lack of credibility probably made that even worse. So I don't get why you keep these same people around who really do not help the Bidens when it comes to improving their outcomes. It is just, what is wrong with them?
It's just we're talking about why her spin doctors aren't good enough. You don't need spin when you just tell the truth.
It's not even that. Yeah, why can't you just tell the truth? Why can't you just say, I was scared to death for him? Why didn't she say that right away? Also, who waits 2 years to tell your story? The cake is baked.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. The story is about Jill, and I see it that way because it really raises more questions than answers. She says she was shocked by what she saw. You know, Democrats are saying they were told behind the scenes that concerns about Biden's age were overblown. People who are supposed to be close to the White House, I mean, his congressional allies, and there are questions about Jill and how much power and how much control she had in the White House all along, because we're talking about her husband.
Yeah. And so if you're thinking about this book tour and this rollout and this launch, starting with these clips, and you know one of the more provocative things she's going to say to Rita Braver is, I thought he was having a stroke. That's the clip they all agreed upon to put out, right? Provocative, get people's attention. But it contradicts everything she said at the time. And when you wait 2 years to correct the record and set the record straight, you can't put that toothpaste back in the tube. The public forms opinions and impressions over time. Why the hell did she release a book setting the record straight before Kamala Harris? Why didn't she do this a year ago? Why is she doing it in an election year?
Yeah.
Why would Democrats want to keep talking about this?
You're thinking like a political operative.
I'm thinking about somebody who cared about her legacy, who cared about she's perceived, knows that they made so many mistakes with her in that last year, not to mention a third Vogue cover that you don't do in an election year.
Yeah.
Like you won the Vogue vote, right? Biden was good on the Vogue vote. He didn't have the
an affordability crisis.
He didn't have the AARP vote. He didn't have the mom in Iowa vote. And it's like they had it's like they totally tone deaf to the reality of how candidates are perceived and how the time was perceived.
That's happening in the Trump White House too. It happens in all White Houses. They fall into this bubble and they're only around elites and they forget about the people who actually vote for them. But I want to go back to this one thing.
Yeah.
You know, she says his appearance was so strange. She says he wasn't making sense. It was inexplicable. But we're talking about her husband. Why wouldn't she just ask him afterward what happened?
It's a great question. I mean, I think he says to her when they're stepping off the stage, I really effed up. And she said, yeah, you did.
Okay, but that's not what happened.
I think she goes on in this other clip that was released today to say she still doesn't know. They still don't know. Look, I think that's why, the debate damaged Biden politically, but how they responded to this debate and what happened that night damaged the credibility of a lot of people on that campaign because of what they decided to do, the strategy they decided to deploy, which was to deny, or to insist that everything was fine. He just had a cold, or it was a one-off.
What did they say? Oh, she even wrote this, that maybe it was the Ambien because he wasn't feeling well, or maybe it was what was the other drug, like a Dayquil or something like that?
Yeah, a NyQuil or
A NyQuil.
I don't know, something. Yeah. What? Okay, whatever. But
go have a doctor. Like, have a doctor look at it. He's the president.
Well, he traveled with a doctor full time. There's a whole medical unit that travels with him wherever he goes. But the problem is when you decide to gaslight and you double down on this farce, because everybody could see in front of their own eyes something was not right. But when they double down and try to tell us, don't believe your lying eyes, and for as long as they did and insisted that we shouldn't believe what we saw, her credibility was damaged. The campaign's credibility was damaged. His political career was damaged, basically over. But this book should have been an attempt to restore her credibility, find her place in history.
But what if you just can't? Because actually what you did was not honorable. I mean,
that should have been the point of this book, which is why she should fire everybody around her.
Or you just don't say anything at all. Whatever you did wasn't honorable. Move on.
But like, if you're writing a book, Tara, you're trying to write something, you write it wrong, right? You're trying to.
I don't know. Listen, I don't think like a politician. You know what I mean? I wouldn't write a book to be dishonest. I truly wouldn't.
I mean, I'm trying to give her the benefit of the doubt. My point is, how could you leave her exposed by changing her story and not expecting the kind of criticism that they're getting, that her situation wouldn't be made worse? Because it is. It's she's not doing herself any favors. And I feel for her. I feel really bad. And then I have to think about, okay, well, you listen to the same people that got you here in the first place. So, Dr. B, come on.
And also, this isn't really like a judgment call. I need a whole committee to tell me what the right thing to do is. I think anybody could probably figure out what the right thing to do is.
You keep the same people around who literally got your husband dethroned.
I don't think that they got him dethroned from power. I think that the American people saw what happened and they realized, like, this person shouldn't run again. I don't blame political operatives for what happened.
Well, look,
I think
Bidens,
they realized they couldn't win with him, it was finally revealed after much attempt by these political operatives to keep him away. When it was finally revealed who he truly was, then I guess the dethroning happened, but maybe he could have stepped down on his own.
Look, a lot of that we've hashed before, and so it's not answerable. It's just it's all look.
And then we get the really horrible news once he leaves office that he has cancer, which is devastating and horrible.
Yeah, again,
it's also information that I wonder how long they really knew about.
That's the problem. They're not believable. And Democrats don't believe them. They've become political pariahs. No Democrat wants to be around them. Nobody wants them coming to their.
But it doesn't matter because they are the last leaders of the Democratic Party. Like, I know we're talking about political operatives, but like, we need to talk about the faces, the leaders who elected these people. And if the last people that were in office created a huge credibility crisis, that is going to roll over into the next election. And that is why Democrats, despite the fact that President Trump is so unpopular, still have such a low approval rating, because people are thinking to themselves, well, why should I trust you now?
Exactly. And again, it goes back to how they're starting this book tour for her in an attempt to restore some credibility and restore some trust. They're damaging it even further because this is news to everybody else. And, they went and attacked people who were trying to help them get out gracefully, who were trying to help them do the right thing. And for 3 weeks, they attacked people and told us we were bedwetting and all these things. And it's just like, how about some humility? How about some humility for what you did to the party, for what you did to the country, for putting the country where it is by being so selfish that you're going to do this to the vice president, I mean, who had her own issues with tactics, obviously, but like to do this to the party, there's been no humility. I hope we get some of that from him.
Yeah. So according to reporting in Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson's book, Original Sin, Jill Biden exercised significant influence inside the White House, especially toward the end.
Yeah.
At the same time, she's written in her book that it's a catch-22 and it's unfair to place responsibility on her because she's a spouse, not a political operative.
Mm-hmm.
But she was obviously blocking a lot of people from him, right? Protecting him.
Yeah. And
so which version is true? Was she simply a wife protecting her husband, or was she one of the most influential people in the administration?
Look, no one ever wants to say no to a first lady, ever. Any first lady.
Yeah. This
first lady had outsized influence. When I signed on to join Jill Biden's traveling team in 19, I had, I had some idea, but I had no idea the extent to which she had a seat at the table, usually via her designee, right? Her chief of staff. But that level of involvement in strategic and political decisions from the campaign to the White House only grew and metastasized. And when you operate in a bunker all the time, you are always looking to be protected. And the protectors, these handlers, they're not really advisors, they're handlers. They behaved more like employees, not advisors, or they behaved more like relatives, not advisors,
right?
Because they were not advising the Bidens to do the right thing from the beginning.
They were actually helping them to like keep Joe comfortable and
correct.
Keep him.
They were there to make accommodations, to punish people by putting them on the manifest or taking them off the manifest and guarding access to him and deciding who gets to talk to him and when on the plane or in the office. And that's how, and the schedule, Jill's person was extraordinarily, probably unprecedentedly, if you talk to, which I have, members of other administrations, other White Houses, other first families, way too much control over the residence staff, the Secret Service, the schedule, the ability to change the schedule. And it was all really to accommodate the Bidens. And when the first lady's person has so much control and power, unfortunately, the thing with the Bidens is they always want it both ways. And, Jill wants to say, well, I was his spouse. Yes, she was his spouse, and she should have been supportive regardless. However, she used that role to exert enormous influence over the day-to-day operations of the White House through her chief of staff, through his deputy chief of staff. And it was their undoing. It was their undoing. This overmanagement, this secrecy, the allergy to transparency, all of it was their undoing. Bad judgment, bad instincts. It was just, you could see it happening in real time. I used to think like, oh my God, it is like pulling teeth to get them to be transparent or to get them to be cooperative about something stupid like the White House usher being let go or the dogs biting somebody or a grandkid getting sick or not coming on the trip. It's just like, this is the dumbest shit. If you are going to be so uncooperative and untransparent and fight transparency this hard about the dumbest, smallest shit, can you imagine these people in a crisis? And look, we saw it. We saw their instincts in a crisis. We saw their natural reaction was to gaslight and lie.
What makes the memoir so awkward is timing.
I know.
Because Jill is trying to explain what happened. She's a central part of this story. And Democrats are simultaneously fighting over what went wrong in 2024. The party's autopsy report is under attack. Critics say the biggest issue is that Joe Biden waited too long to leave the race and that Kamala was a weak candidate. And that there is a broader credibility problem that developed with voters. And I would say that's partially because of Biden. And, you know, one criticism I've heard over and over again is that this autopsy report isn't really for voters. It's like an autopsy report for consultants and operatives and donors, and even they seem unhappy with it. Is anyone going to accept this report? Does it?
No, the report's a joke. I mean, the chair's a joke. The report's a joke. I was on Fox and Friends a week ago when this happened. I was on with Reince Priebus. And, you know, I had to give Reince credit because, you know, over a decade ago, after Romney lost, they were serious about conducting an autopsy, and they did it right away, and they released it within 4 months, and it was 98 pages. It was taken seriously. This party didn't do that. This chair didn't do that. This committee didn't do that. It is crazy. But it shows you this culture of fear, right? They are so scared to death to offend the Bidens or offend Harris. They're unwilling to go there. They're unwilling to lay blame where it belongs.
Well, it feels more like they're afraid of the party establishment, which has frankly done them no favors.
Yeah, well, the party establishment, right? The Bidens did no favors to the party for sure.
And vice, yes, exactly. But I mean, like, and the party is afraid of offending the establishment.
Sure, the party committees, the people who are so petrified of this document and putting mistakes and errors in judgment to paper. They're scared of offending interest groups. They're scared of offending the Bidens. I mean, it's ridiculous. Just be honest with at least our party. Like, let's just put it out there and it should have been done a year and a half ago. So it's silly now. But one of the things
for them,
one of the things that somebody said in that interview was, why did they spend so much money doing research and polling on Jill Biden? And I said, well, that's easy because we were getting polls back all the time. There was a poll that came back that scared the death out of them that was really bad for her. I think it came out from CNN in 2022. But the point is, they wanted the research on her and where she stood with the public because they knew she was going to be playing an even more expansive role as a surrogate, as a chief surrogate and messenger for him in terms of the travel and the stumping. So it made sense that they didn't really care about the vice president. They cared more about how Jill polled because she was going to be doing what we did in 2020, which was travel more than him for sure. But it was going to be even more aggressive.
Also, there were just the whispers that she was running the place, and this has happened before.
And like technically she really wasn't, but because she empowered people in her stead.
Yeah.
It was like the problem with the West Wing and the rest of the White House was that when you were talking to Jill's people, you didn't know if they were speaking for Jill or they were speaking for themselves. And that person, even when they said they were speaking for Jill, you still didn't know. But everybody just wanted to just get the hell away from them. That nobody wanted, I think somebody was quoted in a book saying, I just want to stay as far away from it as possible. The First Lady's staff was, for others in the White House and on the campaign, if you ask anyone, it was not a joyful experience.
Yeah.
If you go back to the campaign and ask the state staffs, and ask, sort of the different offices within the West Wing what it was like to work with the First Lady staff, I'm sure everybody will have a story for you because it wasn't a pleasant place to cooperate with.
Well, I want to go back to the DNC. There are whispers about dissatisfaction with the chairman, Ken Martin, who, by the way, has distanced himself from this report. He basically released it and was like, I don't believe in any of this, but you guys want me to release something, so
It's weird. He's the most. This is the most bizarre thing. You tell the people at the DNC to get their votes that you're going to conduct a thorough autopsy. It's the one thing, tangible thing you can produce. And he can't even deliver an administrative task that
I know a lot of donors feel like they owe it to them.
That Reince Priebus could apparently do in a very fashionable time, timely. This guy has taken now a year and a half, and it was just an amateurish. It's not even worth discussing because that document that they released was something that said we didn't take this seriously. That's
honestly, it could be applied to almost any losing campaign: trust, infrastructure, messaging, consultants. But like, there's no actual specific credibility. So.
Right, because if you get specific, you have to start identifying flaws and failures. And what happens when you do that? You offend people. You get people mad. Ken Martin's scared of somebody. Who's he scared to make mad? LGBT groups or Hispanic groups, more pandering. Instead, let's just tell Democrats what we did wrong. Why the hell were we outpaced in voter registration in Pennsylvania for 4 straight years? How did that happen?
Now, does it make it harder for voters to believe Democrats have actually learned anything heading into this next election?
Voters don't believe Democrats have learned anything. I mean, we're still voting in Congress against laws like easy layups, like the Lake and Riley bill, right? Or Democrats are still unable to answer a question about whether boys should be competing in girls' sports. It's pathetic. Just answer the question. But Democrats can't do it because they're too scared to offend people. Even though common sense tells them otherwise, and they know that the majority of voters feel one way, they still won't. They're still going to hesitate.
Yeah. To me, the through line of all of this is not necessarily offending people, but that there are questions about who can voters really trust. I mean, it feels bigger than Joe Biden and bigger than Jill Biden's memoir and the party autopsy. Voters were told one thing and then something totally different occurred. And that is the through line in the 3 things that have happened here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. This back-to-back weeks now, the autopsy, this book, by the way, this book hasn't even officially launched yet. This is just teases.
Right.
And if I were them, I would be thinking about how they approach the next month. I mean, who's going to show up at her events? Are they going to be curious people? Are they going to be supporters? Or are they going to be confrontational? I mean, the reaction to this book and to these clips, just these teases, has been brutal.
Yeah, it's been really,
And mostly
you can just do a split screen. What she said then, what she's saying now.
But that's fine. But the only job of staff, Tara, is to make their principal look better or improve.
I know, but I don't even think you need staff for this. I would know that. Anybody knows this. You just don't. If you are gonna correct the record, you have to apologize.
Yeah, well, they didn't correct. That's the thing. She didn't correct the record. She confused the record by introducing this new information.
Well, I think just what everybody doing is correcting the record, but who knows? But there's no actual admission of guilt or something I'm sorry, I misled everyone by saying he was fine.
No, this
never happens.
There's no humility here for what they did to the party, what they did to, the country, the decisions that they made that were incredibly selfish, historic. No president has ever done this 3 weeks before the convention before. So since Trump's election, what vision have Democrats offered voters? Not what they're against, not the anti-Trump messaging. I want to know what are they for? You could waterboard me. I couldn't tell you. I saw Third Way or CAP put some ideas out there on childcare, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I hear Democrats say the word affordability. I hear them say the word. I don't hear them say how they're going to make things more affordable or solve the affordability crisis, because I think they know, if you're being honest with yourself, if President Biden could have made things more affordable, he would have pressed that button. And if President Trump could do it, he would press that button.
Well, I think he's made things less affordable, frankly.
This is not. None of this is how it works. So there is no way to legislate your way out of affordability, but they're not going to say that because nobody cared about affordability when we had record high inflation under Biden. We weren't allowed to talk about it. If you were a Democratic surrogate, you had to talk about the macroeconomic statistics, the Bureau and Labor statistics, the job employment numbers. Because if you talked about how people felt about gas prices or inflation, that would be saying the quiet part out loud.
Yeah.
But when Trump is elected, Democrats care about affordability. They didn't care about it when life became extremely unaffordable under Biden.
Right. I mean, that was the whole Bidenomics, like telling everyone.
Exactly. Bidenomics.
Right. I mean, Trump is doing the exact same thing. I think if you had, there's an allergy in politics in which you cannot ever admit when things are not going right. I feel like this is an allergy that whether you have a D or an R next to your name, you seem to have it.
Absolutely.
You can only do it when the other side is in control. Because
neither side has clean hands, and neither side operates very differently from each other. They operate with the same incentive structure.
How's that?
Political survival.
And not actually doing anything to change anything, because when there is no change, they get elected on the promise of change. But if you actually change,
making changes can also make more problems. But like
term limits, ending Citizens United, corporate donors, I don't know.
Yeah, money in politics, super PACs. Nobody's going to unilaterally disarm. It's funny to me when like Democrats.
Some do, but they have an army behind them. But not even AOC has. I mean, she takes money from corporates.
I'm sure everybody. Look, even if it's not corporate, if you're taking money from unions are an interest group. That's true. That's an interest.
Yeah. And they have more power than a singular voter. That's true.
Exactly. So when people talk about influence peddling and the access and influence world of politics and money, it's not just corporate. It's unions as well, who for decades
there are others too.
Sure. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
There's the commerces, right? For the various states, even for various industries. I mean, there's so many different interest groups,
trade groups, individual companies, small businesses. There's an interest for everything. And it's not a Republican thing or a Democrat thing. It is how our system is set up to encourage factions in a way.
Yeah. And also money talks. So basically what happens.
Yeah. And both sides are held hostage to money.
Yeah. Okay. That's quite a way of ending it, but I do want to ask you one more thing. If the answer to what Democrats are offering is still unclear in the next few months.
Well, also, Tara, I want to point this out because it's important for people to understand that, this Congress and president under unified control, they passed one big bill, right?
Yes.
This president doesn't use Congress as a partner. They govern. This White House governs using executive branch power and authority. They don't care about Congress. So a change in party in Congress really isn't going to affect much in the way.
No, because anything they pass, once it gets to Trump's desk, he'll just veto it.
Well, right. I mean, it depends on majorities. It depends on margins. But he's not going to work with Democrats on something to give anybody a win other than himself. And everything he needs to do, he has done and will continue to do at the executive branch level, at the agency level, regulatory stuff, executive actions, executive orders.
Could we actually get a veto-proof majority for Democrats?
There's two schools of thought. I don't know if, people keep saying it's this wave year. I'm not really seeing that in data, but I could be wrong. I think it's likely the Democrats can take back the House.
Okay.
I heard a Republican say they are nervous about the Senate. So, but I don't think there's ever going to be margins that are veto proof or that are like the margins that like Barack Obama had. I think ultimately at one point he had 60. The country's too divided at this point. And
they've just like figured out the primary wars. Everybody's got it like.
Yeah.
And they redistricted so much that every district is pretty much now almost impossible to switch. There are so few swing districts.
There's 435 House seats and there's only 16 toss-ups.
Yeah, because of redistricting. So it's not going to be a wave. Even 16 seats is not a wave to me.
No,
even if they all went to like,
because now Democrats are down by 10, so picking up 16 would only give them a six net margin, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
But like even under Biden's midterm, there were 18 Republicans in Biden-held seats. Yeah. I think there's only 3 or 4 Republicans in Harris seats. The map is just different. The landscape is different. The competitive nature of the map is different. So
yeah, the Republicans were like smart to focus on that, even though it feels very corrupt to me. But
sure. I mean, but what's funny is since when has Trump been shy about like driving through norms? He's always trying to
doing it every single day
through norms, and just because
doing as much as he can get away with, and it seems like there's no one stopping him. So
because a lot of the things there's precedent for, right? Like redistricting early. There's precedent for it. North Carolina and New York, they've all done it mid district, so they can make a case that it's been done before. The same way they can make the case on preemptive pardons, because guess who else did it?
Biden. I know.
Yeah. On our way out the door, we preemptively pardoned all these people. And now Trump's going to blast the door open and do it indiscriminately. And Democrats are going to sit and cry and complain. But look, I'm sorry. Republicans use power as a tool. Democrats use power as a reward. They use they use power very differently.
Yeah. Interesting. Huh. Democrats use power
as a reward. Yeah. Republicans use it as a tool to accomplish their policy priorities.
Yeah.
They just push it through. You saw redistricting as an example. They don't care about the norms. Just get it done because it's legal. Just because it's untraditional, they don't care.
Yeah. Well, Michael, thank you so much for your time and for your candor. Always appreciate having a true Washington insider on the show. And I know you spent some time in the White House, the Biden campaign. You know better than most, so we appreciate your knowledge.
Maybe you will be granted a interview if you put in a request.
Oh, with Jill?
Yeah.
Okay.
You should contact their Slack. I think his name is TJ Ducklow. You might know him. Stand-up guy.
Oh, the guy.
Stand-up guy.
Yeah.
Stand-up.
I don't know if I would get it. I don't think he'd give me an interview.
Stand-up human being, never embarrassed the Bidens, never caused the Bidens bad press, but they've hired him for the 3rd time. It's incredible.
Okay. All righty then.
Can't make it up. Can't make this shit up if you tried.
I guess what happened to me has had very little impact.
Who knows? Maybe he'll feel guilty and you'll get a guilt interview out of it.
I'll try for a guilt interview.
When you harass and bully reporters, you get rewarded and promoted in Biden world. So.
Oh well. All right. We don't need to make this personal, but thank you. I appreciate your time, and we will check back in with you.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Michael. That was another episode of the Tara Palmeri Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like I always say, real talk on this show. We get down to the heart of it all, especially as we head into the elections and people decide who they should give their votes to. Is the party that's asking for power doing enough to show that they deserve it? These are the questions we grapple with all the time and the kind of thing that you should think about and I should think about. And this is what we do. I want to thank you all, though, for tuning into this type of independent journalism where we don't play for either side. Just call it like it is. And if you want to support this journalism that is truly independent, not backed by shadowy donors, I would really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button, like, follow, comment, tell all your friends. And of course, if you can, head to tarapalmeri.com and you can sign up for my newsletter, The Red Letter. It's where I do my exclusive reporting. As you know, I'm a journalist. And by becoming a paid subscriber, you can break through that free wall, get those exclusives first, read all of the reporting that I spent a lot of time doing over using the sources I've built over 17 years of reporting. I want to thank my producer, Dan Schiffmacher. I want to thank Abby Baker, who booked this interview and put it all together. I want to thank Adam Stewart, who does my graphics, and Dan Rosen, my manager. See you again this week.